Now I'll remove the stitch marker from the first stitch of the last round and use a slip stitch to connect. In round 6, we'll work 25 single crochets. I'm going to change to the white yarn while crocheting. Typically, we change the color at the final step of each stitch. First, I'm going to work 8 single crochets in gray yarn. Place the stitch marker on the first stitch. For the final part of the 8th single crochet in gray, I'll switch to the white yarn. Take hold of the white yarn, wrap it around your pinky and index fingers. Then, use your middle finger and thumb to hold the tail end against the crocheted piece. Next, yarn over and pull the white yarn through the 2 gray loops on the hook. Then, we neatly tidy up the ends of the yarn. Next, with the white yarn, we work 2 single crochets. Place the tail ends onto the hook to neatly hide them within the stitches. When we reach the last step of the second single crochet, we'll switch back to the gray yarn. Pick up the gray yarn, wrap it around your pinky finger and then around your index finger. Next, grasp the working piece firmly between your middle finger and thumb. Make a yarn over by bringing the gray yarn over the hook. Then, pull the gray yarn through the 2 white loops that are currently on the hook. Working 2 single crochets with the gray yarn. As you reach the final step of the second single crochet, switch to the white yarn. Yarn over and pull the white yarn through the 2 gray loops that are currently on the hook. Next, with the white yarn, we work 2 single crochets. When we reach the last step of the second single crochet, we'll switch back to the gray yarn. And we'll be using the gray yarn to create 11 single crochets. Attach the stitch marker to the last stitch. After finishing round 6, the total number of stitches is 25. Now I'll remove the stitch marker from the first stitch of the last round and use a slip stitch to connect. In round 7, begin by working 7 single crochets in gray. Place the stitch marker on the first stitch. At the final pull-through of the 7th stitch, change to white yarn. When transitioning to a new yarn, leave an appropriate length of it and neatly fold that extra yarn to the back side of your crocheted piece. Then, work 3 single crochets in white. When you reach the last step of the 3rd white single crochet, switch back to gray yarn and work 2 single crochets in gray. At the last step of the 2nd gray single crochet, change to white yarn again and work 3 single crochets in white. When you complete the last step of the 3rd white single crochet, switch back to gray yarn and work 10 single crochets in gray. Attach the stitch marker to the last stitch. Once round 7 is completed, there will be a total of 25 remaining stitches. In the 8th round, we'll start by crocheting 7 single crochets using gray yarn. Place the stitch marker on the 1st stitch. As we reach the final step of the 7th stitch, we'll switch to white yarn and proceed to work 8 single crochets with it. When we get to the last step of the 8th single crochet, we'll change back to gray yarn and crochet 10 single crochets. Place the tail ends onto the hook to neatly hide them within the stitches. Once we reach the last step of the 10th single crochet, we'll switch to light gray yarn and continue crocheting the remaining stitches with this light gray yarn. Pick up the light gray yarn and wrap it first around the pinky finger, then the index finger, and finally the middle finger. Next, grasp the end of the yarn and bring it to the back of the workpiece. Yarn over and pull the light gray yarn through the loops on the hook. Finally, neatly arrange the yarn tails. Attach the stitch marker to the last stitch. After completing the 8th round, a total of 25 stitches will remain. Now I'll remove the stitch marker from the first stitch of the last round and use a slip stitch to connect. In the 9th round, we'll start by working 7 single crochets followed by 1 increase. Repeat this sequence 2 times. After that, work 9 single crochets. Place the stitch marker on the first stitch. Place the yarn tails up to the hook to conceal them into the stitches. Now, trim the white and dark gray yarns, since we won't need them for the upcoming crocheting steps. We've now completed 7 single crochets and 1 increase. Repeat this sequence once again. We've now completed 2 sets of 7 single crochets followed by 1 increase. Next, we'll work 9 single crochets, placing 1 in each stitch. Attach the stitch marker to the last stitch. Once round 9 is completed, the total number of remaining stitches is 27. Now, it's time to carefully insert the safety eyes. Position them according to the design. Now, allow me to demonstrate how to count the rounds. Now I'll remove the stitch marker from the first stitch of the last round and use a slip stitch to connect. In the 10th round, work 4 single crochets, then 1 increase, followed by another 4 single crochets. Repeat this sequence 3 times. Place the stitch marker on the first stitch. So we've completed the first sequence. Now, continue repeating this all the way around until you reach the end. Attach the stitch marker to the last stitch. Once round 10 is completed, you should have a total of 30 remaining stitches.